Hello and welcome to part 1 of the Italeri 148 scale CH-47F build. Now, all those that play DCS will know that at the time of this video that the CH-47 is the latest module to land, as it were, onto our computers. So I thought it might be quite apt to actually do the build straight after the actual release of the Chinook. So I thought, well, what kit shall I take? In fact, yeah, I took the Italeri one, the 48th one, because it is quite a decent kit. Well, first look it is. But as you can see, you do get quite a fair amount of plastic for your money. And yeah, bit of a spoiler alert, I lost a bit. That's the reason why it's taken so long to release this video. Yes, but anyway, let's crack on. So this video will concentrate really on the cockpit and the cargo area. So I started off basically gluing all the parts that I could together to make my life hopefully a little bit easier. And my first impressions of the actual detailing of the kit is, yeah, a bit soft. However, it's not bad. I've seen a hell of a lot worse. And yeah, it does give you a bit of a, I don't know, not so much a, let's say, clear canvas, but things to work on, and you can. But like I said, the detailing is good, a bit soft, but we can get around that with some painting and some detailing. But overall, so far, building the actual Chinook cockpit is looking rather good. Just a point to note, on the actual cockpit itself, you do have pre-cut apertures for the collective and the cyclic, but also you get a couple of extra holes which isn't used for the F version. Whether they're for the A version that Italeri have done, I'm not sure, but it's entirely up to you whether you want to fill them or not. I didn't, because predominantly the cockpit is black, and once everything's in, you're not going to see them, so I just didn't bother. But that is entirely up to you. You can fill them if you want, but I didn't. Now, if you look at a Chinook from the outside in, especially around the cockpit area, you will see quite a plethora of cables, leads, wiring and all that kind of stuff coming from the cockpit. So it is noticeable, you can see it quite clearly. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to replicate as best as I can. It's not going to be exact, but I'll try and do the best I can. And for that I drilled holes where necessary from the pit, well, from what you saw, and then I proceeded to put instrument base instruments on the back of the actual main instrument panel. So from there I could drill a hole and feed some wire through and have those as instrument cables, which painted yellow you will be able to see from the actual cockpit itself. But it is a simple case of just getting what scraps that you've got using a punch and die set which I've got, and just going from there and just adding just tiny bits of detailing from reference pictures that you do have, and just go from there. Yeah, it doesn't have to be exact, but it does work dividends as well, because when you look into the cockpit you are going to see it. So you can take as much time or as little time as you want with this, but I would, because it really does make a difference. Right, so what you can see here is what's commonly known as an electrician's nightmare. Wires absolutely everywhere, but yeah, more on that later. Anyway, just a little bit more detailing, just putting onto the top console within the cockpit, which is basically dealing with all the engine sort of like settings and all entendres. So that was it, and also I did put some communication cable in there, but that will be later. So painting, I got to the stage where I thought, do you know what, I can prime it and start putting paint on it and making it look like a proper cockpit and cargo bay. So all I've done is I've used, like you've seen there, is a Tamiya grey as a primer coat. It's not a designated primer, it is just an acrylic grey paint, which is great because the paints that I use, which will be the Hataka lacquer range or the orange line, they do stick to this paint rather well. So it is important that you do get a nice solid base. So first up was Night Black from Hataka's. Now all I was doing is looking at reference pictures and seeing which part of the cargo bay non-slip parts were actually painted black. Now these do vary, so it's entirely up to you which ones that you do. Also at this point I can start painting the actual main cockpit itself, predominantly because it's all black. Again, I've used the same paint, the Night Black, and I'll be cutting in again with a different sort of like well, a lighter shade of black. But again, it's just very light coats all over, just getting into all the nooks and crannies and making sure you've got full coverage. So once that was done, it was time to chip in with the NATO Black from Hataka's on the lacquer range. Now, Night Black does have a blue tinge to it. So what I wanted was to put NATO Black, which on the tin it says it's black, but some people say it's predominantly a very, very dark grey. But either way, it's a nice sort of like way of putting in and putting some wear marks on your actual paint. So once that was done, I could do a little bit more of a detailing work, which is putting the hazard step on the rear and then cutting through using aircraft grey for predominantly the actual main colour of the cabin. Thing you'll notice is it's very patchy, as in the aircraft grey paint that I've put down, and that's what I wanted. It was sort of like the first stages of a weathering look, and once it was done I could take the actual masking off, and yeah, it's sort of like going ping, and I thought, you know what, I like that. And yeah, it just shows just enough wear and tear on the actual paint, and then I could cut through and use some of the weathering products which I'll be using in a moment. But before that, it is first a case of doing some dry brushing. I'm using Royal Light Grey from Tamiya's acrylic range, and I'm just basically going over the anchor points for the cargo, which will be throughout the bay, and it just gives that bit of a scuffed look that it's been used. You know, it's not just come out of the factory. And yeah, it just gives that little bit of extra sort of like wear and tear. And that went over to the seats around the cockpit, in around the coaming and the flooring and anything else that had like a straight edge. So once that was done, I could then crack on with some weathering of the oils. Now for this, I'm using the sepia and that sort of like turquoise thing. I can't remember the name of the colour now, sorry. But it is a case of just putting little dobs all over and just using a brush, a designated brush that you have, soaked in thinners, and just basically thin down and just put all over the areas where the pilot and co-pilot will put their feet. So yeah, it's just a bit of added wear and tear. Now, because the actual cargo bay is a lot bigger in area, what I did was I put some Aptalung Sepia oil paint in a cup, and I sort of like put some thinners and away I went, just dabbing it all over where the recessed parts were and where the anchor points for, say, the cargo. And this is to represent sort of like dirt, grime that have been brought into the actual helicopter, whether it's cargo, troops, or just mainly just the crew. Now, just a final little touch within the actual cockpit area itself. I did actually glue this actually on, and then I forgot to actually put the detailing on. And basically what it is a wiring, or the wiring for the intercom system. So I thought, do you know what, I've got a hypodermic needle, which I don't use for you know what, but I do use it for this, and it is making them type of cables. So you're just wiring around sort of like a wire around a sort of like very sort of like small cylinder type thing, and you can pull it out slightly, and then you can affix it to your actual place you want to put it, and it gives you that sort of like look of a radio cable or radio intercom cable that will be putting down. Now I have enlarged it because you won't be able to see it if it was to scale, but that's entirely my sort of like objective. So as you can see there, when you look for the cockpit, you will be able to see it, but yeah, it is slightly overscale. Now finally, all it was a case of just putting the finer points of detailing actually within the cockpit area, and this I was using Vallejo Sky Grey for the paint. It's an excellent paint and highly recommended. So that is pretty much it for the detailing of the actual cockpit. Now the eagle-eyed among you will actually see that the seat harnesses are Second World War Luftwaffe seat harnesses. I do apologise, but I didn't have anything else, so I thought, you know what, a harness is a harness in my head, and sort of stuck them on, and just give that little bit of extra detail. Yeah, I know, but anyway, it was time to put the last pit on, which is like the back of the control or cabin for the cargo bay, and that went on pretty self-explanatory. So detailing a little bit more on the back. Now Italeri do give you a little bit of detail, as in that is what you get, this second bit, that's all you get, but it is a question of just using little bits of evergreen, plastic card, wire, and all the other bits and pieces that you can get hold of. Look at some reference pictures and try and replicate what you can see. Now I'm going to say to you right now that my back end of a Chinook looks nothing like the real thing. However, it is detailed, it's got something on it that makes it look a little bit more, hopefully, realistic. But for this you can go as far or not so far or absolutely nothing as you want. It's entirely up to you. You can leave it or you can put some detailing in. If it looks good to you, then that's all that matters, and that should all matter for anything for this actual hobby. Put it in, have a look. If you don't like it, you can take it out again, and yeah, just go as far or not as you want. It's completely up to you. Right then, and there you go. That is as far as I am going to go with it. Now, once you're happy and you want to commit to paint, then you go right ahead. So all I'm done is I've used a medium sea grey for the actual priming for this, because I wanted something a bit more darker, because I will be putting aircraft grey on again. But once it's on, even with the actual primer, you can see where your work's gone. And yeah, it does look, well, for me, I'm happy with it, because I'm not normally very good at stuff like this. I'll just bung it in and just hope for the best. But overall, I am happy, and it's a case of just, well, like I said, priming and going in for the main paint. Now, with all the grey painting pretty much out of the way, I could concentrate on the seating arrangements inside the cabin. Now, these are predominantly red with sort of like silver trim. And if you look at reference pictures, you'll see inside the cargo cabin that they're absolutely decked out. There's everything in there, all the seating. Then you've got some that are not there, and there's some there are bits and pieces. There's a seating over there on the left and the right and so on. So I didn't do the whole lot. But the tiny little bits of details now is basically putting the chromite yellow, which is the primer used in the actual helicopter itself. And that was used, the paint used for that was from a MiG ammo. Now the seating was put in at this point, and I would just like to say that even with using super glue, they are very flimsy, so just be careful once you've glued them in that you don't knock them, because they will come off, because the only thing gluing them is the two actual legs where this actual main seat is. So just be careful, and a point to note. So with that done, it was finished. All the seating was in, the detailing paint was done, and predominantly the rear of the cabin, which are detailing with plastic card and wires, that was all painted up using a mixture of Vallejo paints and metallic paints from a MiG ammo. And there you go, decals were on, everything that's needed to actually put this thing together, and yeah, put it into the main fuselage itself. Overall, I'm very happy with what I've got. I haven't weathered the actual inside of the cabin, I've just left it as is, but everything else with the wiring and everything else, yeah, it is something to put in, and it is something that you'll be able to see. So, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on part 2.